Boom. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Salt the Streets podcast, the most pro-America, anti-government show you know. The show where we discuss news, government, and culture and how it pertains to you, the individual, and your natural right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I, of course, am that plague-ridden, big bird-looking fella they call Colin. I am today joined remotely, as always, by my brother-in-arms co-host, coming direct from the end of the world bunker, Donovan Phillips. How are you today, good sir?
I am excellent, sir. I would say thank you for having me, but I'm at my own damn house.
Exactly. That's awesome. Yeah, today's kind of a special day. Obviously, I am plague-ridden and have been, but we're powering through. We're doing what we can, and so we're doing the remote cast today. So wildness will follow. But what are we going to be discussing on today's episode? Good sir.
Well, on this episode 144, it is 12:05 p.m.
12:05.
Saturday, March 25th, 2023. We have all kinds of stuff on the docket. We'll see how much that we get through because, like you said, you're sick. I also have two sick kids upstairs. That is another reason why we're doing this remote cast today.
Yeah, there's a thing going on.
Yes. Well, like I said, we've had both kids that have been sick all week, so it is something else. We have quite a bit of local stuff for you guys today. We have an assault weapons ban that is being pushed in our state. We have another thing that I heard about. There's an older story, but I learned about it while I was reading that book, Battlefield America. I was listening to it, and so it's about the Seattle PD, the mesh network that they had there for a little while.
By John Whitefield.
Yes,
that's right.
Precisely. Yeah. We have another thing about legislative privilege, some sneakiness, some nefariousness going on in our own state. I was shocked to hear it. I just couldn't believe it.
If I had pearls, I'd be clutching them.
Yeah, precisely. And then for the national stuff, we have, you have it there at the top. We have like some China stuff going on. We have some Russia stuff. We have all kinds of things. So I'm not sure exactly what we'll get into, but we'll just kind of run through, we'll talk about a little bit about Donald Trump. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us, sir. We hope that you get better. Call.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. We're getting there.
Yeah, we'll get through what we get through today, but it's going to be great regardless. So
Indeed.
We didn't want to leave you guys a whole month without an episode because I know even though we only do every other week, we put out as much content as a lot of weekly podcasts do just by sheer fact that we are streaming for 7 hours at a clip.
Indeed. That's the whole deal. What are you drinking on today? You got a shake going on?
No, this is Liquid IV, and I brought this right on here just to stir it, just to make sure, because I know that I'm going to end up going and getting a beer at some point.
Oh, so. You'll have one for me, I would hope.
Yeah, and then I have some Lotus going on in here. Jordan picked up a Lotus.
Ooh.
Storm. So
fancy pants.
We're going. Yeah, took my Alpha Brain. I'm ready. I feel good. I've been thinking a lot about this show, a lot about why we do it. I feel very motivated. I feel very activated. I want to remind everyone, of course, evaluate a just relationship with the CCP, because we're talking a little about China today. Like, comment, subscribe to the video, share it with everybody, because we're here because we give a shit, right?
That's right.
I was thinking a lot about this, about why we're doing it. This is what I'm writing my piece on this month for the Patreon. So go to the Patreon, subscribe there. It's only $5. We'll get you the newsletter that we put out every month. It comes out the last day of the month. And that's what I'll be writing about. It's like why we do what we care about and why we do what motivates us and how we know what we're supposed to do. And because that is what I've been thinking a lot about this past couple of weeks. So
that's good.
I'm very excited.
I'd ask you why, but obviously we don't want to give away the piece.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure just a wave of, of depression or something like that. Then I'm like, why am I doing anything that I'm doing?
Why?
You figure it out.
Ooh, I need that cough button today. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm excited.
Did you find one?
I found some, but I'm not sold on any of them. Mostly because I'm like, they all cost money, and I'm like, I'm sure I can hotkey something for free. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that.
I do want to mention before we go, I guess we can mention whatever, but because I just brought it up, why am I dressed like this today, right?
Indeed.
Why am I in the doomsday basement? Why do I have the kid on today? It is because there is 4 new states that are actively pushing bills to try and limit citizens' abilities to purchase armor to defend themselves, right? We've talked about this before. It's a really weird thing. A lot of people don't really think about it if you're not activated into anything other than personal carry or something like that, you may not even consider why you would need armor. You've seen us wear our vests multiple times on the show. You've seen us wear the plate carriers. We've talked about them before. If you've seen us do or seen any of the footage from when we go shooting, we're almost always in full kit. There is a reason for that, right? There's a reason because of the philosophy that we follow in regards to firearms, but it's also important that citizens have the ability to passively defend themselves, right? There are a lot of people in bigger cities that wear body armor all the time because they're afraid to be stabbed. They're afraid to be shot. They don't even carry firearms, but they're afraid of the things that are going on around them.
Imagine that.
It's important for people, whether you consider yourself part of the militia or not, it's important that people have access to body armor if they want to purchase it, right? And to that point, I have to ask you, why would the government want to limit your ability to passively defend yourself, right? There's nothing outwardly harmful about me wearing this kit. If someone comes down here and just me wearing this, there's nothing I can do to harm you anymore because I'm wearing a plate carrier. I mean, I have the knife and stuff like that on here, but just the plate carrier itself does not make me more deadly. It makes me harder to kill.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that it does. It makes it more difficult for you to kill me. Why would your government not want you to be able to... Let me rephrase it. Why would your government want to limit your ability to stop yourself from being killed?
Because then the state would have a harder time killing you.
Isn't it odd?
Wow.
Isn't it very weird? So I think that it's a very simple, logical path to follow.
Yeah.
Give me a reason why the state should even want to limit your ability to defend yourself. Why?
Well, I mean,
Because
most of the
it's harder
time,
to kill.
like when we talked about it on the show before, it was around the New York State legislation that was going on, right? And
Yeah.
their big brouhaha at the time was because there was an active shooter at some point that had worn body armor while, doing his shooting spree. Hence, again, it what's the right word? Fever brain. It hampers the state's ability to take you out if you become a threat. And so if nobody's wearing body armor because it's illegal, then the state can take you out as easily as anybody else. They don't want you to be able to protect yourself because they're the only ones that are allowed to protect you.
Right.
That's just the way they think. You say it all the time. Every institution hates you and wants you to die. That's the only answer to that question.
Precisely.
That would have been a good let me ask you this, by the way. That was perfect. That was natural.
And this is California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Connecticut that all have bills on the table that would ban body armor from private ownership.
All extremely safe states, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Isn't it
getting
fun?
hemmed up there and stabbed and shot randomly in the streets. None of that's happening at all.
No.
And obviously it's just the bad guys wearing body armor, of course, right? They're not running around in t-shirts and baggy jeans.
All the bad guys have body armor.
That's right. I'm pretty sure out of even all the major mass shootings, most of the time they're not wearing body armor. I don't recall that being a massive thing. It's only been on a couple occasions.
And that's a very new thing.
Yeah.
As far as, school shootings and stuff like that, or any of that type of stuff. So
yeah, that's healthy. I did see a clip of Representative Donaldson. He's kind of one of the newer guys. That's Freedom Caucus dude. He's from Brooklyn, I believe, originally, but he was grilling one of the ATF guys about the new ban on
pistol braces.
The pistol braces, yeah. Looking at making 10 million Americans felons overnight and stuff like that. And he was grilling them pretty hard about just the ATF's justification for existing and how they're essentially subverting the entire legislative process and the what do you call that? The split powers, separation of powers by having an executive branch that has no legislative power, just make rules that act as de facto laws that turn people into felons. And
Straight up.
And I think it's an interesting fact that the ATF hasn't gone down the body armor route yet, when they could just as easily do that, and they're there's states at this point looking at passing legislation to do this stuff.
I would imagine if the domestic violent extremist thing is able to maintain steam, then it wouldn't be long before they're looking at some type of at least making it like an FFL purchase where you have to have a background check or something like that, that you can't just buy it off the internet. Like I had my shit shipped to my house.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they try and make it so you can do that. That there's some type of waiting period or whatever the fuck, too many more shootings where people are wearing kit, and I think that they probably will start to push for that. And I really dig the point you're making of what you're saying about this Representative Grill and the ATF director, because we had that same discussion with Kevin. We're talking about how this makes X amount of people felons overnight.
Yeah.
Kevin, he says, like, how are they making people felons if they can't pass laws? And it's precisely that line of questioning, because the separation of powers has been ruined to the point that there is no laws being passed on this. It has just been handed over to the executive branch for them to do whatever they want. That's why Joe Biden can pass or sign executive orders that have to do with like homemade kits and stuff like that. It's because the legislative branch won't even touch it. They've just completely handed it over to the executive branch. And the more things get pushed to the Supreme Court, they either flip it back to the states or just say, figure it out,
Yeah, just figure it out. Where I'm going to attempt to play a clip of this real quick. It's a really short one. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay. See how this works.
We're going to see how this works here. Okay, let's do this. I got to share the screen. Hang with me, everybody. And we want to double up over here. Check. And then we're just going to go boom. And now I'm going to lose everybody. Now let me know if you guys can hear this.
Mr. Wilcox, how you
hear
doing?
you.
Fellow Brooklynite over here. Grew up the same time. Let me ask you this question. Do you think it's okay for the ATF to act outside of congressional legislative authority, criminalizing 10 million Americans who are currently law-abiding citizens?
It's good to see another proud son of Brooklyn. I don't believe that is what ATF is doing here, so I disagree with the premise.
Do you think that by this rule, there will not be 10 million felons in the United States because they bought a product that the ATF authorized to be sold and that the ATF said was legal up until the Biden administration?
Not liking a law isn't a reason for ATF not to.
Well, Mr. Wilcox, there's no law. Congress didn't pass it. That's a rule from ATF.
Boom.
Let me ask you this question. Do you believe in separation of powers?
Of course.
Do you believe that the legislative power resides within the congressional body and not the executive?
I do.
So then why do you think it's okay for the ATF to come up with some rule with the force of law that Congress did not pass?
Congress passed the law 90 years ago, and ATF is.
So you're saying to me that a law that Congress passed 90 years ago allows for 10 million Americans to become felons today?
Congress passing a law allows ATF to regulate as technology changes.
Come on, Mr. Wilcox. Don't do that to the American people. We know better. Don't do that. I yield.
Don't do that.
I love that man. I love this guy, man. He's brand new on the scene, and he's buddies with Matt Gaetz and the higher ups in the Freedom Caucus. And I am excited about the path this guy is about to weave. He's been on one of the Timcast IRL shows where they were at live in Congress. I think it was their first one they did. And just the stuff that came out of his mouth, I was like, this dude is based. He is here for it, and I'm here for him. This guy coming out of fucking Brooklyn, too. He is.
I like that.
He knows. I think he's out of Florida, but he's from Brooklyn. But, yeah, I saw that clip this morning. I was like, I know we're going to be talking about some gun stuff today. We got to throw that in there. That's just too good to leave out. And that worked? You heard that all right?
I did, yes.
Sweet. All right,
yeah, it was
good.
a little bit quiet at first for me, but it worked out. And I can mute it. It was fine on the stream because I could mute my microphone and then listen to it on my phone. And so it's perfectly fine on the stream.
Fantastic. Good.
That's more important, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been a while since we did one of these things, so I'm glad.
Yeah. So I do have. Let me ask you this.
Oh, well then let's cue the music.
With that, let me ask you this.
Boom. Short and sweet. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So let me ask you this for this week is, and don't think too hard about it, right? But it is a genuine question.
I don't think I could think that hard today.
Yeah, don't think too hard, but do consider it because it is a genuine question and it might seem simple. In your opinion, what kind of government do we have?
Ooh, I think we have an authoritarian government.
Okay.
Without thinking too hard, that masquerades as a democracy.
Elaborate for me.
So really, I mean, we have a small group of elite power brokers in and around the governmental level. Not all of them are elected officials. Not all of them work for the federal government. A lot of them are, elites in business industries, most of which we don't even know. They're like the owners of giant corporations that own other corporations that own other corporations that make all the products we use every day. It's like 13 major corporations that kind of own all the other corporations we all know and love today. Everything from those guys to lobbyists for them. They all kind of run in the same circles. Some people call it, I think it's like K Street or whatever in DC.
Yes.
I think
Where all the
those are
lobbyists
the
work.
ones that are really in charge of everything that comes out of DC on down. And then we get to think that we live in this representative democracy because we're allowed to vote every 2 to 4 years on different things. And then whatever, I mean, you could look at multiple versions of votes even in our state that have passed by will of the people that have been overturned by the upper echelon of our own government in the state, and then things that are happening at the federal level that are pushed for, lobbied for by the people, and more populist type things that are just kind of never brought to the floor because they don't want to take a vote on it, or they don't think they can get a passing vote on it, or something like that. It's really just, it's all a elite group of power brokers in and around DC that run our entire government, run everything that we do in our day-to-day lives. That to me is an authoritarian government.
So I agree with everything that you said, and it is for those reasons and the pipeline and revolving door from public service to private sector that I would argue that we live under an oligarchy.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because those people, it's not a singular power. It's a group of people that is changing all of the time. So I totally agree, and I think that's like a perfect explanation. I think that it's an oligarchy. I don't think that we live it's masquerading, like you said, as a democratic republic. That we feel good that we get to vote. But when we talk about it, when we sit down with our friends and we have a beer or two, we're like, oh, but it doesn't matter anyway, because the public or the popular vote is not what is used to decide the president anyway. It is all the electoral college that when you even belong to the Democratic Party, they have fucking super delegates and all this nonsense that skirts what the initial plan of the electoral college was. That we've sat down, we've talked about the electoral college, and it's at one point in time, I argued like this is really a pretty good thing. The electoral college is like not a bad system. Like it's pretty fair. It's representative, and then you start to fuck with it with things like superdelegates. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, when it just was what it was in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily bad. Like it was pretty all right. It's been bastardized so bad to the point that it literally means nothing now. Like I said, especially if you belong to the Democratic Party, where they are taking your votes and saying, what do you think, this small minority of people? Because that's really what we're going to do. Your senators, your representatives all have more say than the other elected officials do, who are supposed to be putting their votes into the electoral college because they're superdelegates. Yeah. And people don't even know that. And the same people that don't know that still feel like this democracy is strong, But your own party is choosing to not represent you. They're refusing to represent you because it works better for them, and they just don't want to tell you about the superdelegates or any of that type of stuff.
Yeah. Our democracy is as strong as our economy is, all right? It's the greatest, right. The strongest of all time. I bet you, if you were to do like a legal pad, T-chart of comparisons to, say, like the Russian government, which is a very similar situation, I bet you we would have more in common with the way their government works than not. The only difference maybe is we have more oligarchs than Russia does.
Yes.
We just have
'Cause
more oligarchs in more sectors than they do.
Right. Because they vote too.
Yeah, because they vote too.
Those people also vote.
Yes.
Pretty frequently they vote. They get
Yeah.
to voice their opinion, and we've seen how long Putin has been in power.
Yeah.
And we sit back and call him a dictator. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's a good thing we have the term limit for presidential office, because otherwise, Daddy Bush would probably still be sitting on the throne. To be perfectly honest.
Right. We have two different power structures that are hand selecting who the next choice is going to be, and people are still arguing that this is fair and it's representative of you. You're telling me, right? When we talk about Trump versus Biden in 2024 or any of this type of stuff, right? And if we talk about, well, Biden's not going to run, so then who would it be? Who would they pick then? That's what they say. So who would they pick then? Who would be the guy? Because it's not really up to you. It's what the Democratic Party, who they are going to select. Who are they going to pick? Is it going to be Kamala? Is it going to be Pete? Is it going to be Michelle Obama? Any of these people, right? It's not about who do we want, who do we think would be a good leader. It's who are they going to pick.
That's right.
And it's like they don't even hear themselves saying it, because in your actual rhetoric, you are admitting that you don't believe in the system that you are arguing. It's doublethink. It is absolutely doublethink that your words are admitting that you don't believe what you're arguing for, and you're still willing to argue it.
Man,
In
somebody's
one
been reading
hand,
1984 this month.
I finished it just before we did this episode. I am absolutely locked down. Yeah, I got the whole preview typed up. It's ready to go. I'm ready.
I'm excited.
Yes, no, the doublethink, it's wild, and it was not difficult to think of examples for the preview of, not even really intricate or difficult ones to understand. It's like, this is a really blatant thing where they're arguing for one thing and I'm acting in the exact opposite to show you they don't believe what they're saying, but they're still defending it with their words.
Yeah.
It happens so often. And the people on the left, not even Democratic Party, the people on the left of more progressive ideology are the ones that seem to do it more frequently. And not that the conservatives do not, because they absolutely do, but they are more willing to call themselves out when they do it. There are more conservatives that are willing to call people out for being bullshit artists. And on the left, they just kind of accept it. They'll continue to do it themselves. It's a very odd thing to watch.
Yeah, we had like a small taste of it when the hardcore progressives first came in, like AOC and Ilhan Omar. When they first got into office, they were throwing a little trash at their own party for a hot minute. But once they got reelected, that's it. They've been fully assimilated into the machine now. But just add something to what you're saying here, right? If you listen to like the hardcore neocon people, or even somebody like Shapiro, they will tell you outright that like I don't know what it's called, like the DNC, the Democratic National Convention or Congress or whatever you call that
committee,
the DNC and the RNC, the two parties exist only to put up candidates for the people to vote on. The two parties literally control our choices, which I don't know how you can get more oligarchical than that when there's only two systems that are designed to give us our candidates to vote on. If it's just those two giant parties that allow us the turd sandwich and the giant douche vote at the end of every 4 years, what are we actually talking about here? That is not a representative democracy in my mind at all. That is much more akin to oligarchy. And I believe I almost want to take back my answer, because like I believe I've written about the fact that this is an oligarchy before in some of my Patreon pieces. But no, I'm right there for it, man. 100% oligarchy all the way.
Dark times out here. Dark time. And I don't feel like, especially because you were able to, and I love it because this is still the purpose of let me ask you this. You were able to so eloquently break it down off the cuff of how this is an oligarchy, and so it's not a difficult concept to grasp. You know, it's a very simple, logical thing to follow up. When you're telling me that the people who are leading this all also happen to have the most money, that's not a coincidence. Like that's how this system works. When they all just happen to have the most money, that's not a coincidence.
And they all control the financial system, and they control all the regulation around business. And interesting how that works, doesn't it?
Right. It's like that's not. It's almost definitional. You know, it's very odd. It's very odd.
Yeah, if I can lay it out with Fever Brain that easily, then it shouldn't take much for a normie to throw together that doesn't think about this too much.
This will be a good clip this week.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So with that, let's jump into some local stories.
Let's do it.
We have a couple of different things going on. Let's talk about the mesh network because that is an older thing. I may or may not have sent you this article, but let me find it.
Oh, yeah, and let me, I'm going to open up Signal, and it's probably going to jump on my screen. Whoop, we're going to lower that down while it loads.
Yes, okay, so this is an old story because they say that it was taken down, but
Ooh.
You know how much I trust what any type of power structure has to say.
Indeed.
So,
all right, give me 1 second. I'm going to cut to our Be Right Back.
We're back to Salt of the Streets podcast.
yes.
Social and political commentary.
There we go. Now we're back.
Okay. My
Just
laptop
to
is
get
working
that out
hard.
there.
So
Okay.
it's taking its time,
And I got it.
asking me just what in the hell I think I'm doing.
What do
running all
you
this
think
shit at
you're
the same
doing?
time. Yeah. So you think you can video chat with someone and do things? Absolutely not.
Not even.
Yes. So this is the same deal. I learned about this in that book that I was listening to, Battlefield America.
Okay.
And this story, right, has to do with. Oh, okay. I don't need to look at that. This story has to do with a digital mesh network that was established in Seattle by the Seattle PD.
Okay.
And was done with tax dollars, right? So this article is from 2013, just so everyone knows. I do know that. I did read the date. I do know that it is not right now. My point at the end will be I don't believe that this isn't happening anymore. That's what my point is. So in February, the Seattle Police Department announced it bought what's called a quote-unquote mesh network that will be used as a dedicated wireless network for emergency responders. What SPD did not say is that the network is capable of tracking anyone with a device that has a Wi-Fi connection. They now own a piece of equipment that has a tracking capability, so we think that we should be going to City Council and presenting a protocol for the whole network that says they won't be using it for surveillance purposes, says John Milodablik of the American Civil Liberties Union. A spokesperson for Seattle PD said the network is not being used right now. A draft policy is being reviewed by the city's attorney's office and will eventually go before the City Council. The network includes 160 wireless access points that are mounted on poles across Seattle. Every time a device looks for a Wi-Fi signal and the access point recognizes it, it can store that data. The manufacturer of the network points out in the manual that the mesh network can store IP addresses, device types, applications used by the devices, current location, and historical location. This information can be stored and connected for the last 1,000 times a person is connected with a specific device. The network shows up online in public places, usually at intersections in the city such as 4th and Pike, 4th and University, and 3rd and Union. Even if we assume that the mesh network was installed by good people for good reasons, there's no reason to believe that the people controlling the network in the future will use it for public good, said Brandon Kiley of Alternative News Weekly, The Stranger. And that's a very prominent, maybe that's not the right word. It is prominent. It's a very prominent Seattle paper that like now they're doing print again, but it's still, they've been around for a very long time. We need to have a serious public conversation and establish some very clear rules about how new surveillance technology should and shouldn't be used, with very real penalties for breaking those rules. Kylie first reported on the Technology Wednesday in The Stranger, we believe that people should be free to move about without having the government track their movements unless there really is reason to believe they're engaged in some criminal activity, says Dabbling. Seattle police could not explain why the network appears to be online. Okay, so... And Councilmember Bruce Harrell, who is now the mayor of Seattle, pointed out the need for SPD to be able to collect some of this information. Okay, he's mayor now. That guy is the mayor now.
He's the
Isn't that
mayor.
interesting? He's the mayor now. Okay. So, right?
This has got China vibes deep, bro.
Yes. So, like I said, I have another article that says that they took it down because there's all this backlash. I don't believe that. If it was already existing, I don't believe that it was turned off.
No.
I just don't believe that. So,
That's terrifying.
yes.
I mean, it would
And
also
what that
make sense
means-
on how they tracked people during COVID.
Precisely. And yeah, and what that means is that unless you are turning off your Wi-Fi option every time you leave the house, then it's going to consistently look for Wi-Fi network like it does. When you show up somewhere and it says, press this to connect to the Wi-Fi. When you go into a store or go into a whatever, that option always pops up, right? So if that's the case, then every time you walk past one of those, the sensors, it's just reading your location every single time. So it's tracking you if you walk the same way to work, if you walk a different route to work, if you do any of this type of stuff, it's just logging that information. And it's there, the metadata is there for Seattle PD to access at any given time. And the guy who's the mayor now thinks that it's really important for them to be able to have that technology.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
mean-
This doesn't go away. That article's from 2013. So
Yeah.
they didn't know at the time. That's like, and that's a total coincidence that he just happens to be the guy that they quoted for that. They got a quote from for that. And he just happens to be mayor now. Right? And if we remember, because we've talked in the past about how the previous mayor, Jenny Durkin, is in all kinds of hot water and she's being sued because they deleted thousands of text messages when they were doing the Chaz Chop thing, you know, the Summer of Love, all this beautiful stuff that happened in Seattle that she was such a huge fan of. Deleting thousands of text messages over that time. It's like, it was set to automatically delete. I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with that. It just is what it is. Her, Carmen Best, right? The first female black Seattle police chief that they were super proud of, and then walked the fuck out of there because they let Chaz Chop go on and said, just don't do anything about it. Don't do anything and people will still love you. And they hated her. The people of Seattle hated her because she did nothing. It's bad news.
We've got a hell of a
And-
city going on over there, buddy.
Yeah. So, like I said, I don't believe for a second that they are not using this technology.
No, especially after all this time. Of course they are.
Yeah.
I mean, we were one of the longest states we were one of the states that had like the longest emergency, like COVID emergency orders going on. I think we were the longest, if I recall correctly. And I guarantee you that if it wasn't active before that happened, it was active during that. And why would
Right.
they have ever shut it off? Once you get a bite of that apple, you're not coming back.
No, and even if they turned it off, there's no way they went around and took all the sensors down. Right?
No.
That means the system is still there. So if they decide they want to turn it back on one day, all they do is flip the switch and here we go.
Yep.
So I know the last time I went to Seattle, I was not paying attention to. I would not be surprised if they just turn off the thing that just doesn't, so it doesn't show up on your phone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's still logging all of your access. It's just not telling you that you're clicking on or that you're being logged every time you walk past it.
Yeah.
I'm certain that they have the capability.
Oh,
I'm
100%.
sure.
Yeah, the minute your IP gets detected, I mean, they can pull as much data off of it as they want. I mean, it's the same problem that we have like with TikTok and all the social media apps. The passive collection of metadata is one of the most powerful tools used by governments and companies these days to subvert us into doing essentially what they want to do, or finding out what we're doing or what we're interested in.
And at least with a corporation, it is easy to understand why they would want your metadata.
Yeah,
Because
there's
then they can
dollars
target
there.
ads to you. They can sell you things. The same deal with a body armor. It's just a simple question: why would the government want to have metadata on you? Why would they want to have all of this information aggregated and collected and stored in servers so they can know your trends, your whereabouts, the places you usually go? Why? Why would they want that information? Why?
Why?
So they can do whatever they want with it. So they can so for the same reason. So they can track you. They know where you're doing. They know where you're going. They know what you're doing. That's why they want that information. So they can track you better. They can know more things about you. They can have a better sense of how to go about getting you to do things that they want if everything goes terrible. I mean, the 1984 is really, it's terrible in my brain of just like, all I can do is think to the most, horrific of circumstances. But,
Well, yeah, because
why do they want your information?
Yeah, time will teach you that thinking that way, you'll be better off than if you don't think that way.
Right.
If the government didn't have such an atrocious history of stepping all over our rights, then that wouldn't be your top concern. But throughout the entirety of government, as it's grown bigger, all they've done is gotten more and more severe in the trampling of our rights every single day. The Fourth Amendment, what is that? What's the Fourth Amendment? The right to
Search and seizure.
yeah, the unlawful search and seizure. I mean, what is that? What is this mesh network other than that? Without your doing, or without your knowledge, without your consent, without any kind of warrant from the judicial system, they're getting access to your information. Your data that should be privately held for you, that should be secure to you. But no, we don't have those rights.
And I'm sure their argument would be, because you have your Wi-Fi access on, you're allowing your data to be collected in X, Y, and Z ways. So if we choose to, do a public sweeping, because we're not discriminating, we're just collecting everybody's information.
Yeah.
There's just a net out there for everything. I'm sure that's their argument. It's fine because it's everybody. It's not just a couple.
Yeah. The problem with opt-out and opt-in systems is a huge deal when it comes to data like that. If you have the ability to opt out, that's a red flag, because that means something is already being forced on you without you knowing it. And then you have the ability to try to get out of that system, which means you are already in the system at one point. Versus an opt-in system, you're like, do you want to be a part of this mesh network? Sure. Let me click this button. Now I'm allowed to be picking up on your phones and stuff like that. But when it comes to data, metadata, and all that stuff, the opt-out, opt-in thing doesn't exist really.
No.
And even when it does, it's always an opt-out system, which most of the time it doesn't even exist.
No, so there's one more local story I want to make sure that I hit, and it has to do with bees.
That's pretty.
Thank you very much, sir. This piece has been shown many times on this show. Of course, like I said in the beginning, we have another assault weapons ban that is moving its way through the Washington State Legislature. This one is moving further than any other one has before. This one actually made it out of committee, which they usually have not in the past. It has been passed by the House and is now in the Senate committee. So I would not be surprised for it to be passed through the Senate and end up on Inslee's desk. And of course, we all know Big J Inslee will sign that motherfucker as soon as it gets to his office.
That's right. Well, he's going to be saving lives.
Precisely. Him and Bob Ferguson both. So I would expect that around June, that is when it would kick in. That seems to be how they like to do this type of stuff, kind of as quick as possible.
Yeah.
It usually happen, same day or same week. They have to give a certain amount of time because some people still have paperwork and the processing or any of that type of stuff. I was at the gun store yesterday, and there was no less than a dozen people there that were there to pick up shit that they had purchased. There were people that were buying kits to build ARs. There were people that were there to ask questions about building ARs. Because people don't actually want this, we live in the area that I was in is just outside of like a relatively metropolitan area, an actual town where people live and businesses and schools and children and stuff like that. Same places that, they like you to think that are begging for this type of legislation. when in reality, they're not. And that's why there are dozens of people out there that are building ARs that are buying this shit before it passes, because we don't actually want this.
That's right.
This is nonsense being pushed through by ultra progressive people that are trying to remove your rights from you. It's the same goddamn simple question. I hate to sound like a broken record. Why? Why would they want this when so few shootings are actually perpetrated with AR-15s and what they classify as assault weapons? Why would they want to do this, right? It doesn't actually track logical sense. Their only argument is people don't need that. That's not what, Jesus Christ, we've talked about rights a million times on the show. If we boil it down to even the most basic American rights in the Second Amendment, that's not what the Second Amendment says.
No.
You don't need that. Why should you need that? My justification, the burden of proof is not on me as to why I need this. The burden of proof is on you as to why I shouldn't have it.
Why
And
do
it
you need
still
those
doesn't work
rights,
that way.
Donovan? You don't need those
And it-
rights.
And it still doesn't work that way. Even if the burden of proof is on you and you can meet that burden, it still doesn't work that way.
That's
You
right.
still don't get to decide. So on the most basic American patriot backyard boy thing, shall not be infringed is very basic. On the most based aspect of it, you don't have the right as an individual human being to dictate to me as another human being how I defend myself and my family. You are not better than me. You are not greater than me. You don't have more power than me. You don't have anything that I don't have. Might equals right, and you do not have the power or the ability, even in the slightest, to tell me or dictate to me how I should defend myself. Kindly fuck off. I will continue to build shit. I will continue to print shit. We will continue to rock and the fuck roll. We talk about it so much and it's so important. You know, my only concern is that I don't want people to get burnt out by it. But it's, as I sit in the danger bunker, that makes me look like a goddamn radical. I guarantee you, and I tell you, this is not a radical position. this is a very basic concept that everyone should understand. I should not address like this to miss this point. This was a bad idea, but we are way too deep in it to go back now. I tell you, as a responsible father, gun owner, husband, and person who works multiple hours a week of overtime to support and defend his family, and would happily lay down my life to defend other people who can't defend themselves. I tell you, this is not about extremism. This is not about radicalism. This is about the very basics of what we are asking for. Everyone is asking for all of the time. Rights. And I tell you, just as I would defend you, you don't have the right to dictate to me what my rights are, just as I don't have the power to dictate to you what your rights are. I would never tell you what you can or can't have. I would debate it with you because it would be a goddamn interesting conversation. If you want to have a 50 cal so you can defend your house, I'm not going to tell you no. To the same end, you do not get to tell me no. Kindly fuck off, Bob Ferguson. Fuck off, Jay Inslee. All of these fascistic motherfuckers that happen to run our state, this terrible dictatorial place.
One might say it's run by an oligarchy.
It's horrific. And I don't doubt that if it's passed that it will be challenged legally. I don't doubt that the the Ninth Circuit, it's either the Ninth or the Sixth that's over here, will
think it's Ninth.
Tell us to eat shit and that it's all fine and good to go. But with any luck at all, it will make its way to the Supreme Court. But who knows? This is, like we were talking about earlier with the body armor, this is just in a wave of anti-2A, anti-firearm legislation that is coming around the country in regards to rising crime rates that have been brought on by leftist political ideology. So
Yeah.
it is
I'll say,
not even a case of them eating themselves. This is absolutely how it has been designed, to introduce gun legislation on a state level, certainly to introduce gun legislation so people can push back and we can be pointed to as extremists and as terrorists to make it even easier to justify and to pass this type of stuff. So,
Well, I would say
Because
one little bit of possible good news, though, would be when we look at the New York gun law that kind of bit them in the ass when they tried to pass that. And the Supreme Court said, well, try again, because technically you can't do that. And they were overruled. Mind you, New York City just kind of did whatever they wanted to do anyways and spit in the face of the Supreme Court, because that's what places do, but there might be a little hope with Supreme Court precedent at that point that might be on our side. But mind you, that was a little different because that was about carrying outside of your home. But any little piece of 2A rulings, pro 2A rulings is a good thing. So, there might be a glimmer of hope. We'll see.
Yeah, and there's been a ton of states that are getting the constitutional carry thing. So
Yeah.
Hopefully it is a national trend and not another example of just continued and deep into division across the political spectrum.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get much worse than an assault weapons ban because of the way that they classify things. There are like a ton of pistols and stuff like that. Like when I was at the gun store yesterday, they're talking about threaded barrels. You can't even get a threaded barrel for a pistol. So even if you wanted to just get a compensator for your Glock, you couldn't buy a threaded barrel and put that in your Glock to then put a compensator on it because of this assault weapons ban. That's insane.
That is absolutely insane.
It just shows you that this is not actually about guns like this, right?
No.
It's not about actual rifles or things that they would say is an assault weapon. It's about anything that is outside of, and this is just right now because they don't have a way to go any further than this politically.
Yeah.
It's just pistols. It's just things at your house, shotguns, things that you're going to hunt an animal with. That's the only thing that they can't politically take away from you, because how else would they say, well, we're not infringing on your right to own guns if they're saying, for hunting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the last leg before, no, this is just all too dangerous.
Yep.
So that's why they're still willing to capitulate to pistols, to revolvers, and to Glocks and things like this that the police carry every day, even though they don't like to admit the police also carry fucking AR-15s every day that are oftentimes fully automatic. So this is not about safety. It's about control. Just
Yes.
like so many other things, or really every other thing when it comes to big government. It's not about anything other than power and control. That's all that this is about. It's just increasing power, increasing control. Because if you have any type of individual agency, you're a threat. If you have the ability to do anything, you can do what I'm doing right now and sit in your basement and wear body armor and have a rifle. You're a threat immediately. I just shared an article on our story this week that is an older story, but it was about the longest running standoff in American history that was like almost 15 years, of a guy who got into a tussle with a police officer and like bit his ear off because he didn't have a carry license, and the cop tried to hem him up for it, and he was like, no, this is my God-given right to be carrying this pistol. And so they just armed the fuck up and were just patrolling their property every day for like 10, 15 years with rifles and stuff like that, had his kids out there, and the cops would roll by and they never went in, and eventually the sheriff called it off and they dropped the charges, and like, we never went in because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to try and execute this because people could have died. Sheriffs could have died. It was one guy and his family. And that's so be ungovernable. It's not like you're not a threat, right? That's the whole point. Is if you have individual agency, you are a threat. That's the entirety of the point.
Yep.
That's why one person can make a difference. That's why it's important for you and all of your friends to understand this. That's why it's important for you and all of your friends to have gear like this, to have kit like this, to know what it's about, to train with it, to be comfortable with it, to be able to run, to be able to even just sit here for multiple hours and wear it, so that if you have to just sit in the house and fucking defend yourself, you don't get, oh, I'm so tired, and you take it off and then die. Like it's so basic. It matters so much. And I want everyone to understand that it matters now, because if you don't, then it will be too late. And I'm not trying to be all scary and whatever, fatalistic, but it's important to do now before it is too late.
Yeah,
because
by the
in
time
your
you
house,
need
like I
it, it's
said, if
already
you're just
too late.
sitting, when you're getting tired, it's too late at that point.
Yeah. Well, I have one local story that'll help close us out.
Let's hear it.
This comes from King 5. The capital gains tax is constitutional. The Washington State Supreme Court rules. So we go from them taking the right to defend yourself to now them just having more reasons to take more of your money. The tax on the state's top investment earners passed in 2021. It was expected to raise hundreds of millions for education, and that's how they're justifying their use of the capital gains tax in Washington State, is by putting it all towards education. So from Olympia, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled Friday that capital gains tax is constitutional, reversing the lower court's ruling. In a court's majority opinion, Justice Deborah Stevens wrote that the capital gains tax is appropriately characterized as an excise tax because it is levied on the sale or exchange of capital assets and not the assets of or gains themselves. So it's when you realize the gains or losses, that's when they get to take your money. So at least they're not trying to tax your unrealized gains, like
Right.
What's her face, Pocahontas is trying to do, Elizabeth Warren. Quote, this understanding of the tax is consistent with a long line of precedent recognizing excise taxes as those levied on the exercise of rights associated with property ownership, such as the power to sell or exchange property, in contrast to property taxes levied or property itself, she wrote. So in other words, it's no difference than you having to pay tax after you sell a house on the profit that you made from the house.
And in more basic terms, this is if you're investing in the stock market and you make money off of that. If you then try and sell those stocks to get the money, you'll be taxed on the profit that you made on these trades. So they're saying if you let it sit in the market, it'll be fine. If you floss, if you just have numbers and you whatever, if you're just trying to, what do they call it, like your net worth, right? If you're just balling on your net worth, then it's fine. But if you want to make that actual liquid cash and turn it into something, then we're going to get our fucking piece of it.
Yes. Even though they probably charged you when you first bought it anyways, but that's fine.
Oh, almost definitely.
Yeah. As a quote, there's nothing better in the state than when you can bring more fairness among our members of our blessed community. And that's what happened here today, Governor Inslee said. Republican Senator Linda Wilson said the ruling surprised her, said every other state in the union and the IRS still calls it capital gains an income tax, said Wilson. That was the big argument, is they were saying this is essentially an income tax, and income tax in Washington State is illegal. It's unconstitutional, which is why they can't call it that. So they call it an excise tax. So it's done on a sale. It's not done when you don't count that as income, even though when you report to the IRS on your federal taxes, if you sell your house and make a bunch of money, you put that down as income. So only in this state now is it not income when you sell. That's an excise sale. So that's a whole deal. The tax on the state's top investment earners passed in 2021. It was expected to raise hundreds of millions for education in the state. That supporters of the tax say relies too heavily on sales tax. However, critics argued that capital gains tax is a form of income tax prohibited by Washington State Constitution. In March 2020, Douglas County Supreme Court Judge Brian Huber agreed with opponents, ruling it is unconstitutional tax on income, but was then summarily overruled. So now we have a capital gains income tax in Washington State, whether we like it or not, because it's not an income tax, it's an excise tax. So
the state, both on a micro and macro level of the state of Washington and the overall government figure, is hostile towards money. And
Yes.
I'm not saying whatever. I'm fucking so sick and qualified.
Shout out Bilbo in the chat.
Defending billionaires. No, you have a right to your money. If you earned money, you deserve it. No one else has the right to take that money from you. Taxation is theft. They're hostile towards money here. If you make any fucking money at all, they want to steal it from you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's horrific.
Because by rights, if a millionaire is subject to get a portion of their money taken from them for making $1 million, then the person that makes $1,000 is also subject to that same cash draw. by the
Yes.
state. There's no difference. They couch all this stuff in millionaires and billionaires and investors and big money, but it still affects everybody, from the homeowner, the first-time homeowner that is looking to try to sell their starter home so they can move up in the world and get a bigger, better house, maybe expand their family, and so on and so forth. They're going to get hit with the same type of tax that Jeff Bezos is ideally subject to as well, because
Right.
in the eyes of the state, they are no difference. If you are making any kind of money, they are hostile to that in this state. Period.
It's terrible.
Welcome to Washington State, baby.
Yeah.
Don't come here. Don't come here. Like, it's real pretty in the summertime, but still don't come here.
They want you to be able to have a business, but they don't want you to make a living off of that business.
Yeah, they like the idea of business. You know,
Yeah.
it's a nice idea for people to have jobs and to start small businesses, but really they're going to try to tax and regulate the shit out of you so that you can't even operate that business. And then that gives them more incentive to get more involved and participate more in the private industry, which then just pushes more and more small people out. That allows basically it makes it so that the only business that can survive are giant corporations, which they can easily tax 35-45% in, and they'll still be able to operate businesses. Mom and pop shops can't operate like that. That's game over at this point. With fucking
Right.
minimum wage laws, or, you know, I mean, look at we've talked about like the Starbucks unionization efforts and shit like that. You try to start a coffee shop somewhere, like a coffee stand, they're ubiquitous around here. They're everywhere, right? Well,
Yes.
now you're telling me that as an owner, somebody that wants to start that and prop that up, if you want to hire somebody, you're going to have to pay them $20 an hour plus benefits, full ride, medical, and all this stuff, which equates to probably $35 an hour. You can't even pay yourself that much. So goodbye business. Kevin Garcia says the left destroys businesses. Me and GF can't afford to even hire an employee here in California because the regulations are insane just to hire somebody. That is correct. California
bad.
for a reason, Kevin.
Yeah.
Tough sitch. Tough sitch. Well, I think that was a healthy local story segment. We haven't gone that local in a long time.
No, we don't usually have too much that's going on here. Nothing
Yeah.
that's like really worth our stuff. You know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of, I don't know, random nonsense that happens here, but nothing that really hits on our radar. So yeah, it was good. Just a reminder for all of you guys that we're some of the few sane people that live in this state, and we will continue to bring you news like this and hope of freedom and redemption from a lawless leftist land of tyranny. We will continue to do our best.
That's right. And at least we can all go to bed knowing that we're better off than Kevin is in California. So there's that.
just slightly.
That's right. Oh, well, fantastic. All right. So we will wrap up this first segment. We made it through the first segment. I didn't die, so we're here for it.
We did it.
So yeah, let me hit the button, and then I'm going to make sure to turn off desktop audio so that you can't hear our banter in between segments. And then
Well, first we may
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure that we tell everyone the sponsor for the first segment was Lexi Coyote. She's
Ooh.
home, so she's probably going to be streaming today or tomorrow.
she will not
maybe
be.
even.
We have discussed this.
What's
She
that?
will not be streaming this weekend. She is far too exhausted.
There you go. All right. Well, maybe next weekend. Either way, she streams all the time. There's still videos up there. So
Yep.
the first sponsor is Lexi Coyote on Twitch. Of course, I want to thank you guys for being here. We got a couple people in the chat. We got some other people watching. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's a little bit different than normal, but I think we're vibing. I feel very good about it. Make sure that you like, you comment, subscribe, you tell everybody about it. Subscribe to the Patreon. Go there, $5. Get to the newsletter. Comes out on the last day of the month. We have the book club that's going on. 1984 is this month's book. We're almost done. We're closing. We got 6 days left in the month. So we got a Stephen King joint coming up next month. It's gonna be great. And yeah, I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Bigford Offie on both of those things. You can find all of this at saltofthestreets.com, including the Instagram, the YouTube that you guys are watching right now, and of course, like I said, the Patreon. So we'll be back in just a few minutes for, I think we have some national stories, right? That's what we're doing next. So
That's what we're
we're
doing.
freewheeling. Yeah, we're just doing whatever. So we've got some more stories coming up next.
That's right. Plague Cast is in full effect. And we're going to,
That's right.
before we go to break, we're going to roll the Lexi Kyle ad. So turn your YouTube up, Donovan, so you can watch it. And then we'll get into the break.
All right.
Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the den. By the way, I'm Lexi. Fucking adorable. It's a turtle with a tree in there. Aruba, Jamaica. Oh, I wanna take ya. Oh my god! I'm so sorry. Sipi tamales. Tamales are Mexican. I'm Ecuadorian. Come on, back in. I'm so sorry. Beepity boppity boop. Flippity floppity floop. Bermudas, Bahamas. No wait, come pretty mama. Eat it, bitch. Wee wee wee. Right? That's a Kung Fu Hustle?
I don't think so.
Okay. Just erase and delete everything I just say. I like my Star Wars. I like my stuff. I'm a geek. I am Lexi. I am a variety streamer and also a flight attendant. So I come and I go and I come again and I go. When I'm here, you'll see me streaming.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every